Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett has covered the convention from start to finish, and he joins us now in Cleveland. Major, I think you might be the only one left sitting there in the convention hall. Trump painted a pretty...
I just hope they don't ask me to pull up all the wood on the floor.
They might just put you to work soon. Is there a broom?
I see a broom behind you, Major.
Listen, you know, Trump in his speech really painted a pretty grim picture of the country. Not a lot of sort of hope there, I suppose. But I'm wondering, what about the crowd in the convention? How did they feel about his message?
Well, look, most of the delegates on the floor are Trump supporters, and at times they were sufficiently, and I would say even enthusiastically, supportive of the speech. But there were also times when there was kind of a lull, and I was able to, because it was such a long speech, make my way around the entire convention floor, seeing almost every set of delegations there. And there were long stretches where people were sort of just seated and kind of taking it in and looking at social media, taking pictures, and somewhat distracted. The speech was awfully long. I believe it's the longest acceptance speech in American presidential history, at least that we've recorded by time. And there were definite lulls. And when Trump hit two topics, or three really, the crowd roared enthusiastically: immigration, law and order, and Hillary Clinton. And those were themes that from the very top and the very opening of the speech, Trump wanted to drive and drive hard. And when I talked to Trump senior advisors before the speech, I said, are you going to do something that's more Reagan-esque, more hopeful, more optimistic? And they said to a person, we're going to stick with what got us here. And it's that hard message, which they describe as reality, some in the media describe as grim or dark. They say that's the American, and that's the interpretation of America that most of our supporters have, and we're not going to dilute that. We're not going to water it down. We're going to tell it to them straight because that's what they expect. So for the Trump supporters, it was what it has been, and in the main, what they like. Could they have liked it more? Definitely. As for the audience outside of this hall, on social media and in living rooms, we're going to know in about a week, week and a half, what they thought of it based on the polling data, if it shifts.
Major, Trump's brash demeanor and his unscripted rhetoric is largely what got him to this point. But there were a couple of things that I want to get your take on. He himself called himself the law and order candidate. Some people made comparisons to Richard Nixon. I went back and looked at Nixon's 1968 acceptance speech where he talks about law and order. But in that speech, there were certainly moments where he painted a picture of bringing everybody up. And it wasn't just the criminals. He talked about African-American communities and making life easier for them. In Trump's speech, it seemed to be that it was just all chaos. Even the stories around immigration, everybody that he mentioned was a criminal. There was no success story. Was that done on purpose?
Certainly. And that is the Trump interpretation of the immigration situation in this country. It is a lopsidedly negative interpretation, especially on illegal immigration and those who are undocumented in our country. And he does routinely in his stump speeches and last night in that set piece presentation delve into the details of undocumented immigrants in this country who have committed violent crimes and the Americans who suffered as a result of that. And he took great pains last night to talk about their families, the names of the victims, and the sadness he said he felt. He described it as the most disturbing part of being a presidential candidate, sitting down with these families, listening to them, and in his interpretation, being heartbroken by their stories. And he also gave this sense that illegal immigrants are streaming across the country constantly, an ever-present threat to commit crimes, bringing drugs relentlessly. I mean, it is in miniature what he said when he announced his presidential campaign that got him in hot water in the first place. It is consistent with that, and it is a message that Trump supporters have long responded to. It is quite unclear, and there is polling data suggest it may not be unclear, it may be quite clear that this message does not resonate outside of the universe of Trump supporters, and not only that, could be very problematic in swing states like Florida, North Carolina, Arizona for sure, Nevada, New Mexico, possibly Colorado. And so that part of the speech, you can't even say Trump doubled down on. He was right in lockstep where he has always been on this and gave his supporters what they want to hear, The great question is, how large is that universe, and can it be possibly expanded by this kind of rhetoric?
All right, Major Garrett, we're all going to be waiting with bated breath to see those poll numbers. Major, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Sure. Okay.